Hi, and welcome back to the second hour of this Thursday edition of Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. We're going to turn our attention here in the next little bit. I'm going to take a phone call from Matt in Grand Rapids. Number to call if you want to jump in the program, 877, I'm sorry, that's the number for the Critter Campaign, 877-907-GOAT. So you want to contribute rabbits, water buffaloes, barnyard bundle, sewing machines. That's the number to call, 877-907-GOAT, or go to afr.net. That's our Christmas Critter Campaign. Partner with Gospel for Asia to get these very pragmatic gifts into the hands of the poor in Asia, along with the gospel. So they get both nourishment for the body and nourishment for the soul through this campaign. 100% of what you give goes directly to the field. It's a great project. We're honored every year to partner with Gospel for Asia for this purpose. So think about doing that. Got the catalog on the website with all of the choices you have there. 877-907-GOAT. You can go there or go to afr.net and get the information you need. If you want to join the program, call-in number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. We're going to get to this debacle of the Paul Ryan budget bill. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, but I want to give you a little more detail. We got some sound bites to go with that today, so we'll get to that. But let's start with a caller this hour. Let's start with Matt in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Matt, thank you for calling, and thank you for waiting. I appreciate it. What's on your mind?
There's a lot of stuff on my mind, Brian. How are you doing?
Good. I'm doing just fine. How are you?
Well, I found out, we had a discussion, and I found out that during the Dark Ages, the reason why a lot of things happened, according to some information I found, was because the Bible was off the shelves. People couldn't just have a Bible. And I don't know if that's all true, but it kind of struck my interest. So then I started finding other information. I found that America in 1647 signed a act for schools that's called the Old Deluder Satan Act.
Uh-huh.
The Old Deluder Satan Act.
Yes.
And it was for, so each person knew the scriptures as soon as they could read, so the Dark Ages would never be repeated. And I just didn't know much about that. I didn't know if you knew anything more about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be glad to. I'm not an expert on that by any stretch, but I know a little bit about it, and I appreciate your call, Matt. You know, and Matt is exactly right. This was the first act to establish public schools in America. This was done, I believe, in the Plymouth Bay Colony, is where it was done first, 1647. It was in Massachusetts anyway. I don't know if it was the Plymouth Bay Colony or the Massachusetts Colony, but anyway, it was done in the state of Massachusetts. And it was a law that if you had a certain threshold of population, you had to provide a public education for the children of the families in that township, in that community. By the way, same thing happened in the Northwest Ordinance in 1787. They had to set aside, if they were going to, when they were going to plot a township, they had to set aside one, whatever they called those things, one plot of the township for church and one plot for school. That was the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, and that indicated that religion in the Northwest Ordinance, that education was something that was necessary for a strong religious life in the public. So they expected clearly that these schools would educate people in spiritual truths, not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also in values and religious truths. So that was the expectation. Now, the very first law to establish a public school in America, 1647, goes all the way back to then, but it was called, and our last caller was exactly right, Matt's exactly right, it was called the Old Deluder Satan Act. Now, this is an act to establish a public school, not a private school, not a church school. This is a public school, and the reason it got that name is that the citizens of that colony said, look, we want our children to be able to read for themselves, to be able to think for themselves, so they will not be fooled by that old deluder, Satan. It's right in the law. Satan is a deceiver. We talked about that in the first hour. That's the only weapon he's got is the lie. And those that lived in the Massachusetts colony or the Bay colony, they understood that. He's a deluder. He'll try to deceive. He'll try to fool. We don't want our children to be deluded by that ancient serpent called the devil. So we're going to teach them to read so that they can read, they can educate themselves, they can think for themselves and won't be fooled by that old deluder Satan. And that was the beginning of public education in America. It's traced back to the old deluder Satan Act, which indicates very clearly from the beginning in America, the whole purpose of an education was to introduce people to profound themes and truths about God. It wasn't to remove God from the public square. You look at what public schools have turned into today, and their mission is to purge God and to purge Christ from the public square. That's why you're reading stories every day about schools that will not allow Christmas concerts or will not allow Christmas carols at Christmas concerts or won't allow it to be called a Christmas concert. It's got to be called a winter concert. They won't allow children to mention the word Christmas at their winter break party at school. Can't even wear red and green. Some schools have gone so far as to say you can't even wear red or green to this winter party. You can't mention the word Christmas at this Christmas party. So that gives you just sort of the contrast there between what education was conceived of at the beginning of the Republic and what it has become, difference of night and day. Well, thanks, Matt. That's a great call. Let's go to Terry in Florence, South Carolina. Terry in Florence, South Carolina. Welcome, Terry. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I have a solution for you. I figured out why the U.S. government is trying to purposely break our country.
Okay, why is that?
Can you explain to me the complicity between the executive, legislative, Congress, and the Supreme Court to allow willfully to weaken our country through our jobs, through the wages that people get paid to make money, to earn, to provide for their families?
Okay, now I'm not. Try to summarize that for me. I want to be sure I'm following you and understanding what you're saying. So, what's your bottom line there, Terry, about what the federal government is doing?
The reason they're doing it is the American people will not accept the New World Order unless they break this country, put everybody in need, and then pose themselves as a savior.
Ah, I see what you're saying. So the purpose is to sort of make people completely dependent upon the government, the generosity of the government, the resources of the government, and they are either willing to let it happen or deliberately trying to engineer a complete collapse so that people will feel like they've got no other place to turn but to the government. Is that kind of the idea?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Answer me this. Explain the complicity between the executive, legislative, Congress, and the Supreme Court. Why are they all in compliance?
Yeah.
And allowing it to happen in this country? They're doing it on purpose.
Yeah. All right, Terry, I appreciate the call. And Terry's calling from Florence, South Carolina. Remember, South Carolina is firing the first shot in what will be a cultural civil war. South Carolina is going to secede from Obamacare. South Carolina will be the first state in the union to secede from Obamacare in January. And maybe a part of Terry's answer is let's get a lot of states to follow suit. Focal Point, AFR Talk. We'll be right back in 2. Stay with us.